Welcome back to another episode of Beneath the Armor. I'm your host, Asante Cleveland, joined with our co-host, Trevor Cote. Trevor, how are you doing, sir?
Doing well, it's Asante. I'm ready to lock and loaded for this conversation here.
Me too. We are very grateful to have our next guest on. He is a former receiver from Ohio State University.
The Ohio State University.
The Ohio State University. He has transitioned out of sports into being a sales professional, and then he's also the founder of the platform, The Conscious Athletics. Please welcome Grant Schwartz. Grant, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, I really appreciate it, man. It's nice to have somebody making the intro for me. Usually I'm the person doing that, so I feel privileged to be in this spot. Nice to see you guys.
Of course, I don't know if I could just naturally get that the Ohio State part out, but I'm glad you corrected me.
I thought you did that on purpose.
Right?
No, it was not.
It teed me
I
up.
didn't even think about it.
Yeah, it's a weird thing that we like to add it to. It gives us that extra little boost of confidence that we're such in dire need of being a Buckeye.
Yeah, I mean, as someone from Orange County, California, how did you originally get into football to end up at such a prestigious place as the Ohio State University?
There we go. Yeah, man. So I actually had a pretty easy track there as far as that goes, because my dad was a former Ohio State Buckeye. He played there in the 70s under Woody Hayes. And so I was always such a big fan growing up. And he would go back to the games. He would call me and I would hear it over the phone. I would hear the stands and the crowd. And I was like, man, what is this place? It's this mythical spot in the Midwest. And so I always was, really, really interested in the program. Growing up here in Southern California, obviously we have, great universities like University of Southern California and UCLA. So I'd always go to those games as a youth. And there wasn't a ton of energy around those programs at the time. Coming up, and then obviously when I got into high school and stuff, that was with like the Reggie Bush years with USC, so they were definitely popping. But I had the opportunity to go back for the 2002 Ohio State Michigan game, and that was my first time in Columbus. And my dad being a former player, I was able to go on the field before the game, and I was just like blown away by that place and the fandom and the energy and everything that went along with it. We were lucky enough to go on and win that game, so I got to experience all that. And from that point on, I was like, there's no other place I want to go other than Columbus. And so I set my sights on it. And I played for a high school that wasn't definitely not a football school at all. I grew up in the area where Mission Viejo High School, if you guys are football fans, is the dominant force in the area. So a lot of kids like myself would go there, but I wanted to stay close to my friends and the beach, and so I opted to go to Dana Hills High School here. So it took a little bit of a different route to get there, but it all ended up working out in the end, and was able to get myself to Columbus.
Was football pretty natural for you once you started playing? At what age did you first start playing football?
Yeah, man, I started playing flag football when I was like 6, and then this was back in the day when little kids were allowed to play football, and so I started playing tackle when I was like 7 or 8 years old. And yeah, honestly, from the jump, I was always, one of the better players on the team. I was a little bigger, so I started having to play age up and play with kids that were older than me, which, kind of leveled the playing field for sure for a few of those years. But I think was extremely instrumental in my development as a player, because I was having to go against guys that were older. But yeah, it was always kind of a smooth transition for me. Like I said, having my dad being a former collegiate and NFL football player definitely helped with that process. We had a very intense but productive relationship, so he definitely guided me a lot through those times for sure.
So something I think that would help me as we start this conversation, Grant, I think, one of the big things is with Conscious Athletics and the podcast, you've shared significant interest and importance in this idea of taking care and prioritizing the transition out of sport while you're going through it. And so if you don't mind kind of sharing a little bit just about that, for our listeners and for us, and then I think that will really help us inform like going these conversations, because you're one of our first guests, or the first guest that's really been able to truly dive into that and then share it with others in a really formal way. So we'd love for that to happen.
Yeah, for sure. Unfortunately, that knowledge or that realization didn't dawn on me until I was well out of sports. But I think it really kind of started for me, obviously as I got towards the end of, my playing career at Ohio State, and then, the few small stops I had with the CFL and USFL and all those type of organizations. As Asante can, relate to, as an athlete, you kind of have to have a rational belief in yourself, right? So it doesn't matter if you got 10 seconds left on the clock, 1 second left on the clock, a year left on the clock. As long as there's an opportunity to go out there and make a play or make a name for yourself, you're only thinking about what can I do to improve myself as an athlete, as a player, right? And it's very difficult to kind of take yourself outside of that perspective and think about, what would be life like if I wasn't playing. So it wasn't really something that I handled very well when it happened to me, right? The rug got pulled and I felt adrift. I felt like I didn't have the guidance that I thought I might have in that instance. And the truth is, whether your career ends in college or whether it ends after playing years in a professional league, that support system isn't there anymore, and you've become very reliant on that. And I think that's kind of an interesting aspect of the whole process. Is, as an athlete, we're so regimented, we're so diligent, we're so persistent in our pursuit, but a lot of that's kind of set out for us, literally, by the day for over a year plus, and then it just recycles. And so it's great, and it's a program to follow, but when that's gone, how do you operate? It's like being thrown out into an open space where you have no context of how to use the skills that you've learned. And so, like many people, when that rug did get pulled out from underneath me, I was struggling. I remember I moved back in with my parents. I didn't really have a direction. I didn't know what I really wanted to do with myself. And so I was just, kind of grasping, trying to figure out what that was. Ended up getting into medical sales. And so that kind of gave me a little bit of a purpose, and to kind of give me a ground to kind of take stock of what had happened and where I wanted to be. And as I progressed through my journey, doing medical sales and things of that nature, I was starting to see a lot of success. Was winning reps of the year and all that kind of stuff. And I had thought, well, once I do that, once I start getting money coming in, once I start getting recognition, I'm going to be happy and I'll find my direction. And that just wasn't the case. I still was pretty unhappy. I wasn't finding validation in the things that I thought I was going to find validation in. And so I started really kind of digging into, what's the source of that discomfort? Why am I not feeling the way that I thought I might? And this was when podcasts had really kind of started taking off. So I was, trying to find some help and some information, and stumbled across a podcast that's now super famous, but it's the Tim Ferriss podcast. And there was a guy by the name of Naval Ravikant on that episode, and he was talking about a lot of this mindfulness stuff. He was talking about self-actualization. He was talking about journaling, all these positive things, self-education. And so I said, you know what? I was able to perform at a very, very high level, utilizing these skills, utilizing my persistence, utilizing my hard work, utilizing my determination. What if I applied those things to myself via these these practices like the mindfulness, as I mentioned? And that's when all the ideas started swirling for me. It's like, man, if I could have had this mindset, if I could have implemented this way of thinking or this perspective, why I was playing, what would that have done for me in those moments? And that's really where Conscious Athletics was born. I said, you know what, I know if I'm feeling this way, I know there's a lot of guys and girls that are feeling the same way, and maybe we can do some stuff to help them. So that's where that was kind of born from.
Yeah, that's so true. I'm curious, at Ohio State, did you guys have any sort of sports psychologist on staff or anything? Because when I was in college, that wasn't a thing. And I feel like having someone with that mindset would have really helped. So did you guys have that available?
No, we did not. We did not. That's just, as you said, it really wasn't a thing. I feel like a lot of the focus on that part of people's experience hasn't really come to light, and really over these last couple of years. Coach Tressel, I will say he was very, very big on not just player development, but personal development. He definitely instilled a lot of things that we may have thought a little bit annoying or cumbersome during the time. But now that I look back on as a man, I'm like, wow, he was really trying to kind of set us up for success after sports. So no dedicated resources, but Tressel, I think, definitely probably filled that role a little bit more than some of the other college coaches out there.
I'll give a shout out now. They have a quite robust program at Ohio State. There's probably about 5 or 6 total in the athletic department. It's a pretty amazing program now.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, there's no shortage of resources in Columbus, that's
So,
for sure.
so I would love to hear what were some of those personal development, character development things Coach Tressel, even though you found annoying at the time, really looking back on it, were probably pretty significant.
Yeah, so he actually released a book that you could go out and get. It's called The Winner's Manual. And so there would be a different iteration every year of the Winner's Manual that we would basically study throughout the season. And it was, it was succinct. It had its process, and we'd work our way through it starting in camp. He would always have a theme for each year, as many programs do. And those would all tie into what he had put into the Winner's Manual. Now, the Winner's Manual was full of stories, it was full of quotes, it was full of just relevant information to whatever that theme was for that year. And every single meeting, especially in camp and before that, would start off with quiet time, and we would all spend about 10 to 15 minutes reading through whatever section we were prompted to read through, and then we would kind of talk about it as a team. As a 19, 20-year-old kid, you're like, what are we doing this for, man? Can we just get to watching some film so we can get out to practice? But yeah, now that I'm looking back on it, I'm like, wow, that he was really onto something there, and he was really trying to set us up for success. But yeah, it created a really, really positive culture, created a collaborative culture, and definitely made you think about things that you probably wouldn't have in that same circumstance.
Wow. I want to go down that path. That's all right with you, Asante.
Yeah.
How did like, I'm guessing obviously what he said you all did, but to truly invest in and do that stuff, like, I just got to imagine that's not something that it's pretty rare for a team, especially a football team, to spend 15 minutes on something related to personal development. What was the buy-in like from you as a freshman all the way to the senior? Did that change?
It definitely changed. I changed so much from the time I got there to the time I left. A lot of it against my will, but most of it for the positive. He definitely, made that a focus and a priority of what we were doing. And, Coach Tressel has this image in the media of being stately. And I think that's accurate. I think he really understood what it meant to create and cultivate young men. He still does that. I know he just recently retired from being the president at Youngstown State University. And now I think it looks like he's getting back involved a lot with the program in Ohio State. So yeah, to have that as your leader and to have somebody, constantly implementing those things on a day-to-day basis, the proof's in the pudding. We talk about it actually among the former players is, if you look at the guys that were there during the Tressel era, a lot of them are doing a lot of very, very positive things, conducting themselves as stand-up members of society, if you will. And that's not always the case, and it's just so funny to see the differences between different generations and what those effects of how the coach runs a program, what that means for them moving forward in life. And it's pretty evident when you take a look at the Tressel era players versus some of the other coaches that have come through there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm curious to know, because you and me have a similar background in your dad played college football and he played in the NFL. My dad played college football and played in the NFL for a year. What was the advice or some of the guidance that your dad gave you as you started to transition out of the sport?
I mean, yeah, I mean, my dad, when it came to that part of it, he'd struggled with that as well. He had constantly, be grasping for something to kind of fill that void. And I think that was the one thing that he passed along to me, is just like, you just need to really dive into yourself and find out what's important to you. And then, refocus your energies on that. Unfortunately, there's no one size fits all program when it comes to that. You really have to kind of understand what your strengths and weaknesses are. And that comes through self-reflection. I think that was one thing that he definitely instilled, was the need to have time of self-reflection. You need to understand yourself before you can make any decisions. Otherwise, you're just kind of you're shooting in the dark and you're hoping that something lands.
Yeah, 100%. I try to tell that to some like the college players I know that are transitioning out. Like, this process is going to suck. You are going to be frustrated, upset, but you're going to learn so much about yourself in the process that you're going to come out of it on the other side. But while you're in it, it is going to suck.
Hey man, it's our identity. It's everything that we've always known. It's the only thing we've only known about ourselves is how do I operate in life without being known as Asante the football player or Grant Schwartz the football player. It's the only way other people know how to address us. So there's always awkward moments of, especially in those early days, are what are you doing, or who are you signed to, or I heard this happened to you, or whatever it may be, and you're just like, nah, dude, I'm sleeping on my parents' couch and I'm trying to get a job as an inside sales rep. They're like, it's definitely a hit to the ego. And it's uncomfortable is a good word for it, for sure.
That "what are you doing" question was I just dreaded it. Oh my god, do not ask me what I'm doing.
That's why I avoided going back to my hometown. I wanted nothing to do with it. I didn't want to see the people who knew who I was. I was just like, I just want to get out of here, man. I just want to kind of start a new life and be my own self and not have to kind of, answer to the old Grant. But yeah, and they're always like, oh, well, I heard you were doing this. I heard this happen. I heard this, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, yes, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not playing anymore though.
It's a pretty interesting thing of like, it's so hard to run away from a name when people know that name or that self, and you are changing and everyone's stuck with that old self, and they don't recognize how much it, like, the pain, so much so that you'll avoid going in. I find that to be such a fascinating thing, for just like everyone in public is trying to be nice and thinking of you in that way, yet in reality, it's actually significantly hurting your own sense of self or how you view it, because you want to be someone different and more than just the image that you had at that one time. I think it's a really, really interesting thing that you guys just shared there.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think one thing that, that I touched on in one of my episodes, I can't remember which one it was particularly, but it's about kind of like that. You go back to your hometown and it's easy to slot back into the person you were when you left, right? There's, a lot of the same friends are still around there. If they haven't left, they're probably doing the same things you were doing when you were, 18, 19. And they assume that you're going to be that same person. And it's easy to get like sucked back into those cycles. A lot of them don't tend to be positive, unfortunately. But again, like just being able to be like, hold on a second, I've moved past this. I've had years between that person and the person I am today. So I'm not saying it's impossible to go back to your hometown, but you definitely have to be on your P's and Q's and make sure that you're not falling into those same habits that were fine for an 18-year-old kid, but maybe not so much for a 20-something-year-old.
Asante, what were some of the things your father either prepared you or didn't prepared you for, or said to you as you were transitioning out?
He was more just encouraging me to be like proud of what I accomplished, because when I retired, there was still so much almost guilt that I didn't reach the level in my mind that I thought I should. I felt like I let people down, like I didn't do X, Y, and Z. So it was more just a reminder to be proud of what I've done. And then also the reminder that you are more than a football player. This is not all you were capable of doing. This is something that you were pretty good at, but you will find other things that you were also very skilled at. So that was the biggest message of like, just be proud of what you've done and also know that you have so much more to accomplish.
Were you able to
Yeah.
take that and run with it? Or did it take a while to believe it?
It took a while. It's taken a while.
He took it and he walked with it. He took it and he walked with it.
Yeah, I crawled with it for a little bit. It drug behind.
Oh man, that's a really good point. I haven't really thought about that perspective, but it's funny. You're right. You're down on yourself when in reality you accomplished something that literally 0.2% of people who have ever attempted to try to do what you did have done, right? And it's like it's easy to look at it as like, oh, I didn't get to where I wanted to. That's a failure. But in the eyes of 99.78% of everybody else, you were a massive success, and you got to do things and experience things that people dream of. I mean, as the topic is right now with all the fervor going around college football coming back out for EA Sports, like you see how much people want to experience that. And it's easy when you're going through it to discount that fact. But as you get older and you look back on it, you know, wow, I was able to do X, Y, Z, and I was able to meet this person and experience that. It truly is special, but it's hard to have that perspective when you're on the ground and it's just happening to you in that moment, for sure.
Yeah, and you know this too, especially since I didn't go out on my own terms, and most players don't go out on their own terms. So there's that feeling of unfinished business that I still had so much more I had to do, and now I won't have that opportunity.
Right. Yeah, no, it's definitely a real one. You're right. There's what Peyton Manning and Ray Lewis are like the only people who've ever got to go out on their own terms. It's a very, very small few that actually get to take that path. And you know, sometimes you have to come to that realization is like, okay, maybe this path isn't for me. Because as you know, Asante, I'm sure there was times when you're with teams that you're like, how is this not working? Like, I'm doing everything I need to do. I feel confident about the product I'm putting out there in the field, but it's a numbers game. And sometimes that number is not in your favor. And you know, accepting that and moving on is just a really tough pill to swallow.
Yeah,
For sure.
Yeah.
So I have like a 50% formed question in my head. So you guys are just gonna have to bear with me on this, and hopefully it comes out articulate. So everything, Grant, I think you mentioned like until that time's up, everything that you're going to be thinking about is how can I continue to be a better football player? How can I be able to do it where I can stay in and make this part of my everyday? The biggest thing that one of the bigger things that I have a challenge with as a sports psychologist at with the athletes that I work with at PC and other places is obviously everything that they're doing is inundated with strengthening their physical self, the technical and the tactical piece. Like that's obviously built into everywhere. I think now we're getting to a place where how can you strengthen the mind in those areas? For me, the hard part is how can we help convince, influence, and help these athletes understand that what also is going to help you improve as an athlete and improve your performance is by investing in yourself off the field, not just academics. Obviously, academics and college athletics, whatever school you go to, that's built in. But what we're talking about is way more than that. But yet that takes time, that takes energy, that takes risk, which I think athletes at the time view as, well, that's just taking me away from other really, really important things. I don't have enough time in the day because I need to go to do my second lift or I need to go to recovery. But as I think what we've continued to learn and talk about is, but by allocating some time, not an exorbitant amount, but some time to building the self in all those other different areas, thinking about your transition out of sport as a sophomore in college is actually going to help in your performance. Maybe not directly, but at some point. I have a hard time communicating that message and to get buy-in. And so I didn't know if either of you or have any kind of thoughts on how you've gone about it, what you would share. That would be fantastic to hear.
Yeah, Asante, do you got anything?
I think now it is probably an easier pitch to the kids because there are so many more opportunities that aren't just tied up in like you have to go pro. Like nothing really matters until you go professional. So now that there are more opportunities, you can help them see that it's bigger than just now. You can start to think about where you want your life to be outside of football, like being able, or whatever sport it was, like start to consider your options of you're not just locked into like you can only be this one thing. Like you are witnessing in college sports now, going to the NFL, these people are like Caleb Williams is a mogul as a rookie, as a rookie. Yeah. So outside of like an extreme like that, you can start to paint the picture that you have all these skills and just start to consider what else you're interested in, how this could benefit you outside of sport and helping find fulfillment that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, those are great points. I think from this perspective, this is actually a question as you were posing it, I was like, I think he's going that way. All right, let's go. Because it's something I thought about a lot, because at the end of the day, getting it implemented with college programs is where I believe it needs to start, right? And how do you do that? Well, you get the coaches buy-in first and foremost. And I think that's the one thing, is like talking about the improvement that this can add to a player's performance on the field, right? And I think the most prevalent example, and I apologize to Buckeye Nation for even bringing this name up, but JJ McCarthy. I don't know if you guys have seen anything about what he's been doing with his mental approach, and I know there's been a lot of shots of him before the game, cross-legged, sitting on the field goal post, meditating before the game. And then all of the things that he does prior to, with visualization, with just mentally preparing himself to be in those moments. And I'm not saying JJ is not a phenomenal athlete, but if you want to talk about someone who's absolutely maximized everything that they've been given, he's a great example of that. And that is a direct result of his investment into himself, and being able to understand, how do I calm my mind? How do I have perspective in these moments so that I'm not just allowing the moment to run by me? Because I think an easy example of that is, we all are fans of many sports, not just football, but you sit there and you think, how the heck did they just make that decision? Like, it's so obvious to me sitting here in my chair with a cold beverage in my hand watching this. How did they make that decision? But when you're in that moment, everything is moving a million miles per hour. And what these practices do, and investing in yourself, they help you slow those moments down. They help you say, you know what, this is what's happening right now. How am I going to react to that? So I think it's really kind of focusing on what the benefit is going to be. Yes, it's a little bit, it's a little bit unorthodox from what most athletes are used to, because it's all been about drilling the physical part of the game, and I'm going to become the most physically dominant person I can be. But the truth is, when you see the super successful people, the people that are at the very, very top, and you talk to your former teammates, or your current teammates that are doing it, the ones that are really excelling are the people that are taking that time to invest in themselves from a mental aspect. And it doesn't take a quick search to go find who those people are. I mean, Kobe Bryant, being a Southern California guy, was always a mentor from afar for me. Just the way that he went about his practices, and he was huge into that kind of stuff. And you can see that. You could see that he understood, his time in the sun, and he did the absolute most with it. And I think that comes from saying, hey, it's not just about being the most physically dominant person. It's about being the smartest person, not the smartest person, but the most aware person, for whatever that moment that is being presented to you.
It's almost like the most emotionally intelligent of yourself.
Yep.
And knowing yourself, then it really helps you navigate the situations that are presented to you, whether it be on the field or off.
For sure.
And so getting coaches buy-in, I also think, can help in terms of how can coaches improve their recruiting process, and helping parents of those kids that they're recruiting, and recognizing we're going to also allocate our time towards that area too, which again, if you're a parent that wants to see their kid grow up and to be whole, I just feel like that's just like a slam dunk in terms of how to really sell why this program is important to their child.
For sure. And I think everybody, you don't continue to play sports into college without the aspiration of most likely wanting to continue after that. And, this is a massive part of doing that. And if you're not implementing this in your game, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. And I think that's the best way to appeal to athletes. You don't want a guy across the way who's been doing that for the last 2 years, who's right in that aspect to walk circles around you, do you? Or, I mean, you could, but I doubt the answer is going to be, yes, I would love for that person to run circles around me.
Yeah, there haven't been too many examples yet of athletes openly practicing that mindfulness. But I think the more people see it, and see how someone like JJ McCarthy meditating in front of the goalposts and performing the way he does, seeing the benefits in performance, I think will help encourage more athletes and see it as a useful tool.
Absolutely.
How long into your sales career, when you start to realize you weren't feeling as fulfilled as you thought you might, did you start finding the mindfulness practice that started helping you?
I was about 2 to 3 years into it. I remember I was driving. If anybody's familiar with Central Washington, Yakima area. No disrespect to Yakima, but it's in the middle of nowhere. And I just remember thinking to myself, man, what in the hell am I doing here? And I was having a lot of like, just kind of, you know, I guess for lack of a better term, just not a lot of confidence in myself, because I felt like I had picked a line. I was going down that line and it wasn't fulfilling me. So it was around that like 2 to 3 year mark that I started doing that. And it just really opened up a lot of doors for me. I started feeling a lot more fulfilled. I started being able to separate myself from work, whereas before I'd been identifying as this was who I am. I'm a sales rep. And I was able to kind of take a step out of that. And that was really kind of that moment for me, because I think a lot of people, when it comes to this kind of stuff, and a lot of the information that's out there is about, you know, how do I become the most successful business person that I can possibly be? And I just think that's a fool's errand. I think that if you chase after that, you're gonna be constantly let down when you get to the quote unquote goal that you're going after. And so for me, it's about like spreading this message to, how do I become the best version of myself? How do I become the best version of who I want to be? And then everything else will kind of fall in line after that. Because when you're living your best life, for lack of a better term, you're going to start seeing doors open that you didn't even know were there, and you're going to start meeting people, and you're going to start doing things that really align with who you really are. And that is the most fulfilling thing that I can think of, outside of having children, to be honest. It really is something that you really are like, wow, this is a path that I can take. And I didn't even know it existed before I started doing this work.
Grant,
How,
sorry, go Grant. You can go, Asante.
how long into your journey did you start journaling? Because I love on your site the affirmations that you have, but almost the journaling prompt that you've listed as a resource to help people get started. How long into when did you start journaling?
That was pretty quick when I made this move to try to start like living this type of lifestyle. That was like one of the first things that they talk about doing. And so I was looking at the other day, you can go back to my notes in my phone from 2015 is when I started doing that every single day. And it's really just a prompt for your mind. It's just to set you up in the right type of perspective to attack each day. Life is really freaking hard, as we're all aware of. And so constantly reminding yourself of what's important and what you're trying to accomplish, I think, is a very vital part of setting yourself up to be successful.
Yeah, I definitely have to second that, because it took me around 3 years after I retired to start changing my mindset, but journaling was the first thing that I got into, and it has really changed my life. And I would encourage everybody, like, whatever you're going through, you need to have a journal. Just like be able to write things down, write what you're proud of, what's not going well, what you're grateful for, but being able to have that conscious record. And over time, the way I look at it, it's become like a gift that you're giving to yourself, because I can go back to how was I feeling on May 3rd, 2021. And I can look back at exactly what was going on. And it's just being able to track the progress of where you've been, where your mindset was at the time, and just to see how much it's progressed.
I mean, it's invaluable. It's actually a weird thing, right? Because like you said, going back and looking at those thoughts from days gone by, and you're like, wow, I was that person. That's how I was feeling in that time frame, and this is where I am now. And you can actually see that progress, which I think is something that is extremely important to touch on, because this journey that we're on, there's not a lot of milestones. There's not a lot of like, hey, congratulations, you just hit this many minutes of journaling, or this many words. Like, those don't exist. And so it can be very easy to kind of get discouraged. Like, I'm not seeing the progress that I think I wanted, or that I was setting out to see. And the truth is, you are. It's just a very, very short or very small amount each day, right? That old notion of let's get 1% better every single day. But I think that's even taking too far. Let's get 0.1% better every single day, and just understand that there is no finish line. That this is a journey of a lifetime, literally. But yeah, to have that written record actually gives you validation, like, wow, I've come a long way from that time. Because listen to how I was speaking about myself, or speaking about my situation, and now I would never say those or do those things. And you can actually have that tangible visual for you right there.
Yeah.
Do you have, so I get a lot of questions with people asking, like, should I should I look a place that prompts my journal? Should I just have it open-ended and then just start writing, see what it is? Do you guys have any from personal experience, what has helped you get into it versus prompts versus just open page?
Asante?
The one I use now is just open page. I always write down 3 things I'm grateful for, and then I'll write out some affirmations. And if I just want to write out some things I want to put into the world or just bring to my mindset, I'll write that down. But the first journal I started with was a small 14-day gratitude journal, and there were prompts in there. So I believe that having prompts will help you get your mind going and sometimes ask you the right question that you may not even think to ask yourself. And that could be really helpful to unlock some things.
Yeah, I would have to completely second that. It definitely it primes the mind to start thinking in the right direction. I still use it to this day. I mean, sometimes I'll have some just kind of one-offs where I'll just kind of write down something on a page and then I'll throw it into my desk and not look at it again. But the prompts I feel like are a really strong way of getting yourself in the right mindset and also allowing others who have gone down this path to kind of guide you a little bit, right? So yeah, I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
Trevor, do you journal?
I do. I feel like though, as a psychologist, and saying I journal isn't really that like exciting and surprising. So I think it's way more interesting when you hear someone that was a professional athlete to be able to say like, oh yeah, I'm doing these. I don't know. I hate the word using soft skills, but I know that's like the big thing that they use. But the thing actually that I've learned is people start saying it's just the human skills to be able to be good at life. So I like using that as like, so these human skills that I think are just littered in our textbooks when we are in training. And just for me, it just feels great to hear people that I think a lot of people look up to you all and what you've lived through and what you've been able to accomplish. It's a way better story than me doing it.
I like to hear it, Trevor. What do you do? Do you do open prompts or how do you?
So I started with prompts. With for me, it was the gratitude. It was what do I want to accomplish today? How am I going to go about doing it? So you get like a little micro in terms of how am I going to do it, and then what are potentially a barrier and how would I overcome it? So that's like a morning journal. In the afternoon, it's the what do I love that happened and what are things that happened that I would want to improve on tomorrow. So basically this idea of like practicing learning how to view every mistake, failure, adversity that you experience in that day and how it's going to make you better tomorrow, and like actively writing that out, I just think trains the mind to think that way when it comes up.
I mean, yeah,
that's a good one. I think I need to add that. Because I'll write down a win of the day, but having that, what do I want to work on, is really key.
It's what do you want to work? Yeah, you should. What do you want to work on? And I do love, and it's really hard. What did I fail at today, and how is that making me better tomorrow? Like that for me has been the hardest, but I've seen it show up in my day to day where I'm like, oh, I can't believe my mind went there. I can't believe I just experienced getting yelled at or doing something poor and then not immediately going into I'm a low life piece of shit, but more of a, like, you know what, tomorrow I'm gonna be way better at that. And that's gonna be awesome. So
yeah.
that only happened because every night reminded me that prompt reminded me.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I'm gonna
So I have a question that, Grant, you mentioned validation that like, I'm guessing through sport, there was a ton of validation just through kind of those outcomes and the numbers and then, where you were at. And then as you got into the business world, there was validation through being successful with the awards and money that was coming in. And you said that wasn't enough. You were expecting it to be enough, but it wasn't. Do you mind sharing what you meant by or just basically what you meant by needing to change that validation and in that process that you realized what your body and mind were really yearning for when you thought it was going to be just success from the rewards of the business, but you realized that kind of was half fill in the bucket. And what did you learn about yourself of where the other validation came from?
Yeah, I think it was just the part of just kind of getting to know myself better. I had assumed that these things would be the proper level of validation that I was looking for. As I mentioned, they weren't. But it really, to me, kind of just came back to the fact of there's no one size that fits all. For some people, it is. For some people, they love that stuff. They get juice off of it. It fills them up. They get off of their week and they feel energized. But for me, that just wasn't the case. I just wasn't getting that reciprocal energy back. And it just, again, goes back to the fact of taking account for what is right for yourself. And I think that everybody's, looking for those answers, and it's easy to try to do these, like, these generic processes. But with these things like journaling, with the mindfulness, with all, they make you confront yourself. They make you look at yourself from outside of the outside perspective. And sometimes it's you don't like what you see. You're not what you thought you were, or what your mind is projecting. And so that was really it for me, man. It was just like when I started doing those practices and I started really kind of like looking at what is valuable to me, I reshifted my priorities. And the truth is, I haven't seen any less success. I've still done well. I've still received promotions and all this kind of stuff. And it's a little bit more on my terms, right? And I think that's the most important part about it.
Sweet.
What is your daily routine like to put yourself in the right frame of mind?
Yeah. So first thing, as soon as I open my eyes, I do the journaling practice. So I do my daily affirmations. I do my 3 things that would make today great. And then I do what I'm grateful for. And that really kind of sets the tone for how I'm going to go about my day and the things that I find important to myself. For me, being a parent, also having a full-time job, the only chance I have to work out is in the morning. So I'll go straight into a workout in the morning. As an athlete, I feel like that's very, very important part of who we are. A lot of times you see people who get very sick of that process. I myself was one of those people, just because we've had it shoved down our throat for so long. Like, I think the first thing you want to do is separate yourself from that. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not going to work out 6 days, 5 days a week. I'm not going to do that because it was forced upon me for so long. But for me, at least, and I can only speak from my perspective, obviously, it's what makes me who I am. And so when I can get that workout done early in the morning, it sets the tone, again, along with the journaling practice for the rest of the day. And then I go into my work day, right? Luckily for me, I get to work from home, and outside sales, so I can, come and go as I please, so to say. And I get into my work day, and then generally around like 2 or 3 o'clock, hopefully my boss isn't listening to this, but I'll take like an hour to myself again, where I'll do some reading. I'll do my meditation, and I'll just go take a walk outside, put my feet in some grass, and just try to recenter myself for the rest of the day. And then after that, it's full-time dad duty. So then I'm on that for the rest of the day. But I feel like it's important. I feel like we get wrapped up in our days to just stop. And it doesn't have to be an hour. It can be 15 minutes. It can be 10 minutes. It can be 5 minutes, just to take a second to just kind of recalibrate and put yourself back to neutral, as well as trying to, build myself in a way that gratifies me. And I guess now that I'm saying this out loud, that's part of how I've kind of found that balance. Is I'm just not so 100% on everything. I try to kind of find that happy medium, so that I can continue this, because this is a longevity game, man. Like, I mean, I'm only 36, and I'm like, wow, I got 30 more years, 30 plus more years of this, maybe. If I'm lucky, it could be longer. So how do I do that? And that's just, making sure that I'm filling my tank in the ways that allow me to continue.
Yeah, that's great to hear, and a good reminder that it is a practice. This is something that you need to continue to do. I have recently been reminded that when you take a break from it, you start to fall off and get back into the similar feelings of possibly when you were first transitioning out, and that feeling of loneliness, depression may start to creep back in. And it was just the reminder of, oh yeah, I haven't been doing the things that make me feel good.
Oh man, that's so true, man. It's scary in a sense, because it's like you're holding on to this rocket ship, and the moment you let go, everything goes out the window. And I mean, it's not that dramatic, but it's close. And it's kind of like it's the same thing as working on your physical health. You could work out every single day, 6 days a week for 39 years, and take a month off, and you'll start to atrophy. It's the same exact thing. And it's frustrating, but it's the nature of things. And I think people like to delineate those two, the physical and the mental, but they're completely connected, and they have a lot of the same guidelines that allow you to either be successful or not in them. So yeah, no, I had that same realization. And full transparency, I fall off and all the time. And like you said, I'm like, why am I feeling this way? Because I haven't been doing what put me in that right perspective in the first place. So that's a really strong point. Really strong point.
It's also like when you fall off, it only reinforces, because when it falls off and you lose it, it only reinforces the things that helped you get there. And so it works really well together. It's almost a really good thing that we actually go into the tank a little bit, because it only, again, reinforces how awesome those things that we truly engage in are and how important they are. It would be really scary if we just stopped doing it and we felt good and we continue to feel good, then we're never going to kind of continue the pain of working out every day and, the difficulty of journaling. So it's actually a really cool relationship that forces us to engage in those healthy things.
Yes, it is
Like it.
the nature, the balance, right? The balance is trying to find that happy medium.
So
Yeah,
Grant,
it also made me
go, Asante, sorry.
go. I was just gonna say it also made me feel grateful that I had created a routine in the first place, because when I first stopped playing football, I didn't have a foundation. So when I was depressed, I was just depressed and I didn't know why. But in this spout, it was, oh yeah, it's because X, Y, and Z. So to start to feel better about yourself and start to feel better about what's going on, you need to start doing X, Y, and Z again. And it's just that simple. So it was just reassuring that, like, okay, there is something to go back to, and I'm not just lost in the wind.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, that's great.
No, I mean, I think that you just hit on it, and that what you were just talking about, I think is the superpower of athletes, right? And that's one of the main things that I really try to draw out of these conversations is like, you have everything inside of you to live that type of life at a very, very high level. Like those same attributes, you can apply those to this type of work, and that type of persistence and consistency that is required for you to actually see these results. You have that. And I know there isn't a structure and somebody hand holding you through that process, but think back on those days and that feeling of I guess of prowess that you had when you were an athlete, and that energy that you carried with you. Carry that same stuff to reading, carry that same stuff to journaling, carry that same I'm going to be the best, excuse my language, I'm going to be the best motherfuckers ever done this. I'm going to read so many books that they're not even going to know who I am anymore. Like, I'm not the same person that you knew Grant when he was 16 years old and all he did was play video games and work out. Now I'm this person, you know what I mean? And you have that superpower, like you really do, because to compete on those levels, as we all know, it takes an extreme level of an accountability that, unfortunately for the average person, they don't possess. And we have that. And so, to let that go by the wayside would be a sad thing to see.
Best thing about sport.
100%.
So true. So I want to know a little bit more about the conscious athletics. Did I just butcher it, Grant? I apologize. The
No, you got it.
Conscious Athletics podcast.
Yeah.
So I would love to know at this point, how has it impacted you as you've kind of like embarked on and started to develop this business platform of helping current and former high athletes transition out of sports? So for me, the first question is, how has it impacted you? And I guess the second question within that would be, what are some of the things that up to this point that you've really taken away that have really impacted not only you, but your listeners?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's accountability. The one thing that I try to draw, I don't have any answers. I have no answers, actually. A lot of me is just posturing and hoping somebody can can help me feel validated in a lot of the thoughts I've had. So it's been just that it's held me accountable to these things that I've been talking about. Like we were talking about just a few minutes ago about kind of falling off these processes. Before I kind of re-energized that, I wasn't as diligent on some of these things that we talk about. And so it brought me back to that. It centered me. It's allowed me to really like understand how powerful those things are. So I think that for me would be accountability for sure. and then really is just getting to know some of these people on a level that most people in their life don't know them, right? And so the kind of the formatted way I go about the podcast is I want to know everything about you. I want to know where you started from, what your journey was, how you got to the levels that you got to, and what was that experience. And some of these stories that I've gotten to hear from people that I consider very close friends that I'd never heard the story before. And I never knew that's the way they felt. That's been very fulfilling. I think it's been eye-opening for the guests that I've had to speak about those things in that nature, because a lot of the questions that I'm asking aren't the main questions that athletes are getting. Nobody really cares about that kind of stuff, unfortunately. And obviously what we're trying to do here is bring more light to it. So that's been super fulfilling, is really just kind of getting to know my guest on a deeper level, watching them have those realizations, and then, hearing the feedback from people that you haven't talked to for years, or people that you've never met, and they reach out and say, hey, I was able to catch this episode, or I saw this clip that you had on Instagram or wherever it may be, and it really resonated with me. And I've been thinking about a lot since I experienced that. So that's been super cool. I'm trying my best to be as to diversify my guests as much as possible. It's easy for me to pick football players because that's where my base of relationships are. But I've had I had a women's softball player on there. I had a high level water polo player on there. I have some other guests lined up that are basketball players and things of that nature. Now, while all of our experiences are extremely similar, there are some differences, right? And it's interesting to hear from those people as well. So just getting to know different aspects of the athletic life that I hadn't known before is definitely one of the positives for sure.
And it's a huge gift for them to get asked these type of questions, because we get asked like the same 5 or 6 questions, and you kind of just go into your media response of oh yeah, this. But to ask them questions on a deeper level gets them to really reflect and possibly say things that had been rattling around their head, but they've never been able to express because no one's asked.
Exactly, man. And I mean, mental health, not just with athletes, but with the society, and as Trevor can obviously attest to, is it's in an interesting place right now as a society. And I feel like when you actually ask people those type of questions, you can kind of see it on their face. They're like, oh, like they're actually interested in knowing about what's going on up here. It's not just surface level stuff. I honestly just got the chills from even saying that, because of the conversations that I've had, and you really see people start to open up and start to really let you know what they're going through. And the truth is why they all have different flavors. We all got our own baggage, and no matter what face somebody is putting on, you don't know what's going on inside. Unfortunately, I've had multiple teammates, some of the happiest people that I've ever known, take their lives. And it was just absolutely shocking in the moment. Like, how could that person do that? This was the guy that was always providing the laughs. This was the guy that was having the best time at the parties. This was the guy, this, that, and the other, or girl, either way. And yeah, it's a powerful thing to have a conversation about, and any little tiny little positive influence that you can have on that, to me, is what makes it all worth it. I have no end goal with this. I'm not trying to make millions of dollars. I'm not trying to be a personality. I'm just trying to have a conversation and hopefully help some people out along the way.
I like that word gift, Asante, of it's about the gift of being able to share your story, but ask the questions that get someone to maybe have never been asked to do that, and realize people care about those. And so it's not only the impact of you, the gift of it.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, for most of their lives, they are only viewed in the lens of an athlete, of an elite athlete, and not the total human part of it. And so they only get asked questions that you would ask an athlete. But there's so many more struggles that people just, for the long time, it's starting to change, but just have not cared to know.
I think Kevin Love has been a great voice in this space. So has Michael Phelps, and obviously
I think DeMar DeRozan too.
DeMar DeRozan. These oh yeah, I saw that. That one was good actually. DeMar's was really good. Mm-hmm. You're talking about the creme of the creme. I mean, Michael Phelps is arguably the greatest Olympian of all time, and so when you hear somebody like that talk about their struggles, you're like, Okay, if he's struggling with that, then it's okay for me to struggle with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I talked to one of my teammates who's got inducted to the Hall of Fame, and he was talking about his struggles as he transitioned out, and it was like, if you're struggling, then it's like, okay, I'm not great. Like, there's nothing wrong with me. Like, everybody goes through it.
Yep. Yeah.
I think it's actually one of the bit, like people say, what's the benefits of social media and all that stuff. One of the bigger benefits has been everyone has the platform that people can see and they can post. So like these athletes that people probably wouldn't, or anyone that's famous that would be not be able to reach other people, they can put that out there and be like, and reach someone in small town Iowa and understand that they're not alone and how they feel to say a big name like Michael Phelps. That for me has been, you can touch so many people's lives through that, and it's pretty cool.
I mean, totally. I think that as athletes, we're always viewed through a lens of being a tough guy or a tough girl, tough person, that we can handle anything, and that that we don't have time to talk about what we're feeling internally. So when you see people of that stature actually open up about that, it really opens the doors for it to be more of a standard in what we do. And then again, it goes back to, at the end of the day, you're gonna be better in every aspect, and one of those aspects is how you're performing on the field. And that's the end goal of every athlete that's performing at a high level, is to be the best version of themselves.
So Jay-Z has been my go-to. So when I work with certain athletes that come in and they carry this certain persona, that they don't need this stuff, and I'll put on like our orientation, like Jay-Z talking about his like 2 minutes of like about his way engaging in therapy and self-reflection and all that stuff, and by the end of it, I just get eyes back to me of like, oh wow, if Jay-Z's doing that stuff, then I should be shutting up. So Jay-Z is my go-to, and it was awesome when he got interviewed by it.
When Hova speaks, you listen. Period.
Yeah, exactly. I do
That's
drop the mic and I just end, and we get referrals in the next day.
He's a powerful figure, man.
Powerful man. Um, do you have anything to say, Asante?
No, I was just gonna say, Grant, thank you so much for sitting down and talking with us and sharing your perspective. It's awesome. People, please go check out Conscious Athletics. My favorite part of your website is the resources tab.
Yeah.
And Grant has put in a giant list of different books you can read to help improve your mindset, different podcasts to listen to. I already talked about earlier, but there's a part where you can have different journal prompts. This is going to help you get yourself in the right frame of mind to succeed. So, Grant, this is awesome what you're doing. Keep up the great work.
I really appreciate this, guys. It's really, honestly, a privilege to be on with you guys. Just listen to what you guys have been doing so far. You're spreading the word, and that's what this is all about. So thank you so much. And as Asante mentioned, if anybody has any questions or wants to get in contact with me, shoot me a DM, reach out to my email, whatever it may be. I appreciate you guys. I really do.
Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Spotify. You can find me on Apple Podcasts. You can find me on Instagram at Conscious Athletics. Yeah, and those are my main platforms that I do most of my content on. Probably going to be looking to go to YouTube here at some point, but just haven't really got the time to do that right now. So, but yeah, Instagram, my website, which is www.consciousathletics.net. As Asante mentioned, a ton of resources on there. That book list, it's not all about self-improvement. There's some really kind of silly one-offs, but I think that's important to kind of expanding your perspective as well. So yeah, I'm just here to help, guys. So I appreciate it.
I was just looking at your book list. I can't believe I didn't look at this beforehand. Wow, I love the variety.
Yeah, no, there's some silly ones. I think Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Share that you've read every one of them?
I have read every single one of them. Some of them multiple times. I got books sitting here right now. I've really dove into that part of it, and that's definitely something that's helped me along this process. Is deferring to people who are a lot more intelligent than me is kind of my MO. So
I don't know. Have you read The Mindful Athlete by George Mumford?
I've heard the name, but I have not. I don't think I've read that. The Mindful Athlete.
Mindful Athlete by George Mumford.
Okay. Well, for giving book recommendations, the one book that I always recommend is, well, there's a few of them, but the number one being is Awareness by Anthony DeMello.
Okay.
Very, very, one of the most impactful books I've ever read in my life, for sure. A short read, which is always a plus for somebody like myself, so I don't get lost in the pages, but just a really, really great perspective on kind of having awareness and understanding yourself. And then another one would be, I always forget the guy's name, Letting Go by David R. Hawkins. A very, very important thing, I think, for us athletes is saying,
yeah,
you know what, that time has passed. Come to grips with it. Even if there was people in your life that you think did you wrong and put you in bad positions as far as, you know, trying to help you progress your playing career, let it go, because you're only poisoning yourself by holding on to that stuff. And that book does a really great job of articulating how to do that.
That's a great point.
Asante, you got to add one now. We've had two. We've each shared a book.
Mine's pretty simple. The Four Agreements. I will share that book all the time. I love the Four Agreements. I read it. Yeah, love it. I probably read it maybe twice a quarter.
Don Miguel Ruiz, very, very wise man.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Grant. This was amazing.
Appreciate it, guys.
This has been another episode of Beneath the Armor. We'll see you guys in the next one.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review and hit the follow button, because there's more sport knowledge on the way. If you're interested in more information or want to engage in further conversation about these and other issues in sport, visit our website at spknmedia.com. To stay updated on all things SPKN, follow us on social media at SPKN Media or email us at team@spknmedia.com, and we'll be happy to welcome you to the SPKN community.